Xin chào các bạn, mình là Phút đọc sách. Hôm nay mình sẽ đọc What If. New York Style Time Machine. Question: I assume when you travel back in time, you end up at the same spot on the Earth's surface. At least, that's how it worked in the Back to the Future movies. If so, what would it be like if you traveled back in time, starting in Times Square, New York, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, a million years, a billion years? What about forward in time, a million years? Answer: 1,000 years back. Manhattan has been continuously inhabited for the past 3,000 years and was first settled by humans perhaps 9,000 years ago. In the 1600s, when Europeans arrived, the area has been inhabited by the Lenape people. The Lenape were a loose confederation of tribes who lived in what is the new Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. 1,000 years ago, the area was probably inhabited by a similar collection of tribes, but those inhabitants lived half a millennium before European contact. They were as far removed from the Lenape from the 1600s in the Lenape of the 1600s are from the modern day. To see what Times Square looked like before the city was there, we turn to a remarkable project called Wilkia, which grew a smaller project called Manhattan. The Wilkia project has produced a detailed ecological map of the landscape in the New York City at the time of the arrival of Europeans. The interactive map, available online in wilkia.org, is a fantastic snapshot of a different New York. In the 1600s, the island of Manhattan was part of a landscape of rolling hills, marshes, woodlands, lakes, and rivers. The Times Square of 1,000 years ago may have looked ecologically similar to the Times Square described in Wilkia. Superficially, it probably resembled the old growth forests that are still found in a few locations in the northeastern U.S. However, there would be some notable differences. There would be more large animals 1,000 years ago. Today's disconnected past work of the northeastern old growth forests are nearly free of large predators. We have some bears, few wolves and coyotes, and virtually no mountain lions. Our deer population, on the other hand, have exploded, thanks in part of the removal of huge predators. The forests of New York 1,000 years ago would be full of chestnut trees. Before a blight passed through the early 20th century, the hardwood forests of eastern North America were about 25% chestnut. Now, only their stumps survive. You can still come across those stumps in New England forests today. They periodically sprout new shoots, only to see them wither as a blight takes hold. Someday, before too long, the last of the stumps will die. Wolves will be common in the forests, especially as you moved inland. You might also encounter mountain lions, as known as catawars, also known as pumas, also known as catamounts, also known as panthers, also known as painted cats, and passenger pigeons. Although you might not see the clouds of trillions of pigeons encountered by the European settlers, in his book 1491, Charles C. Mann argues that the huge flocks seen by European settlers may have been a symptom of a chaotic ecosystem perturbed by the arrival of the smallpox, bluegrass, and honeybees. There's one thing you will not see: earthworms. There are no earthworms in New England when the European colonists arrived. To see the reason for the worm's absence, let's take our next step into the past. 10,000 years back. The Earth of 10,000 years ago was just emerging from a deep cold period. The great ice sheets that covered New England had departed. As of 22,000 years ago, the southern edge of the ice was near Staten Island, but by 18,000 years ago, it had retreated north past Yonkers. That is, the current site of Yonkers. It probably wasn't called Yonkers then, since Yonkers was the Dutch retrieved name for the settlement dating to the late 16,000s. However, some argue that the site called Yonkers has always existed, and in fact predates humans and the Earth itself. I mean, I guess it's just me who argues that, but I'm very vocal. By the time of our arrival, 10,000 years ago, the ice had largely withdrawn across the present-day Canadian border. The ice sheets scouted the landscape down to bedrock. Over the next 10,000 years, life kept crowing back northward. Some species moved north faster than the others. When Europeans arrived at New England, earthworms had not yet returned. As the ice sheets withdrew, large chunks of ice broke off and were left behind. When these chunks melted, they left behind water-filled depressions in the ground called Kelhorn Ponds. Oakland Lake, near the north end of Springfield, both Yard of Queens, is one of the Kelhorn Ponds. The ice sheets also dropped boulders they picked up on their journey. Some of these rocks, called glacial erratics, can be found in the Central Park today. Below the ice, rivers of meltwater flows in high pressure, depositing sand and gravel as they want. With deposits, which remain as ridges called eskers, crisscross the landscape in the woods outside my home in Boston. They are responsible for a variety of old landforms, including the world's only vertical U-shaped riverbeds. 100,000 years back. The world of 1,000 years back may have looked a lot like our own, though with fewer billboards. We live in an area of rapid, pulsating glaciers, but for 10,000 years our climate has been stable. Well, had been. We're putting a stop to that. And warm. 1,000 years ago, Earth was near the end of a similar period of climate stability. It was called Sangamon Interglacial, and it probably supported a developed ecology that would look familiar to us. The coastal geography would be totally different. Staten Island, Long Island, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard were all burned pushed up by the most decent bulldozer, like advance of the ice. 1,000 millennia ago, different islands dotted the coast. Many of today's animals would be found in those woods: birds, squirrels, deer, wolves, bat bears. But there would be a few dramatic additions. To learn about those, we turn to the mystery of the pronghorn. Many modern pronghorn American antelope presents a puzzle. It's a fast runner. In fact, it's much faster than it needs to be. It runs at 55 miles per hour and sustains that speed over long distances. Yet its fastest predators, wolves and coyotes, barely break 35 kilometers per hour in a sprint. Why did the problem involve such speed? The answer is that the world in which the problem involved was a much more dangerous place than ours. 100,000 years ago, North American woods were home to the coniferous, the darwood, arcodus, a short-faced bear, and Smilodon flaccus, the bare-toothed cat, of which may have been faster and deadlier than modern predators. All died out in the Quaternary extinction event, which occurred shortly after the first human colonized the continent. If we go back a little bit further, we'll meet another frightening predator. A million years ago, before the most recent great episodes of the glaciations, the world was fairly warm. It was the middle of the Quaternary period. The great modern ice ages had begun several million years ago, but there had been a little lull in the advance and retreat of the glaciers, and the climate was relatively stable. The predators we met earlier, the fleet-footed creatures who may have been preyed on the longhorn, were joined by another terrifying carnivore, a long-limbed hyena that resembled a modern wolf. Hyenas were mainly found in Africa and Asia, but when the sea level fell, one species crossed the Bering Strait into North America. Because it was the only hyena to do so, it was given a name Chasmoportetics, which means the one who soothes the cayenne. Next, Mark's question takes us to a great leap backward in time. 1 billion years ago. 1 billion years ago, the continent plates were pushed together into one great supercontinent. This was not the well-known supercontinent Pangaea. It was Pangaea's procedure, Ronmidina. The geologic record was spotty, but our best guess that it looked something like this. In the time of Rodinia, the bedrock that now lies under Manhattan had yet to form, but the deep rocks of North America were already old. The part of the continent is now Manhattan was probably an island region connected to what is now Angola and South Africa. In this ancient world, there were no plates and no animals. The oceans were full of life, but it was simple, single, solitary life. On the surface of the water were mats of blue-green algae. The assuming critters are the deadliest killers in the history of life. Blue-green algae, or cyanobacteria, was the first photosynthesizers. They breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Oxygen is a volatile gas. It causes iron to rust, oxidation, and wood to burn, vigorous oxidation. When cyanobacteria first appeared, the oxygen they breathed out was toxic to nearly all other forms of life. The resulting extinction is called the oxygen catastrophe. After the cyanobacteria pumped Earth's atmosphere and water full of toxic oxygen, creatures evolved that took advantage of the gas violate nature to enable new biological processes. We are the descendants of those first oxygen breathers. Many details of this history remain uncertain. The world of 1 billion years ago was difficult to reconstruct. But Mark's question now takes us to an even more uncertain domain, the future. 1 million years forward. Eventually, humans will die out. Nobody knows when. If you do, email me. But nothing lives forever. Maybe you will spread to the stars and last for billions or trillions of years. Maybe civilization will collapse. We'll all succumb to disease and famine. And the last of us will be eaten by cats. Maybe we'll be killed by nanobots hours after you read the sentence. There's no way to know. A million years is a long time. It's several times longer than a Homo sapiens has existed, and 100 times longer than we've had written language. It seems reasonable to assume that however the human story plays out, in a million years, it will be extinct its current stage. Without us, Earth's geology will grind on. Wind and rain and blowing sand will dissolve and bury the artifacts of our civilization. Human-caused climate change will probably delay the start of the next glaciation, but we haven't ended the cycle of the ice ages. Eventually, the glaciers will advance again. A million years from now, few human artifacts will remain. Our most lasting relics will probably be the layer of plastic we've deposited across the planet. By digging up oil, processing it into durable and long-lasting polymers, and spreading it across the Earth's surface, we've left a fingerprint that could outlast everything else we do. Our plastic will become shredded and buried, and perhaps some microbes will learn to digest it. But in all likelihood, a million years from now, an out-of-place layer of processed carbohydrates, transformed fragments of our shampoo bottles and shopping bags will serve as a chemical monument to civilization. The far future. The sun is gradually brightening. For 3 billion years, a complex system of feedback loops has kept the Earth's temperature relatively stable as the sun has grown steadily warmer. In a billion years, these feedback loops will have given out. Our oceans, which nourished life and kept it cool, will have turned to its worst enemy. They will have boiled away in the hot sun, surrounding the planet with a thick blanket of water vapor and causing a runaway greenhouse effect. In a billion years, Earth will become the second Venus. As the planet heats up, we may lose our water entirely and acquire a rock-famous atmosphere. As the crust itself begins to boil, eventually, after several billion more years, we will be consumed by the expanding sun. The Earth will be incinerated, and many of the molecules that made up Times Square will be blasted outward by the dying sun. The dust clouds will drift through space, perhaps collapsing to form new stars and planets. If humans escape the solar system and outlive the sun, our descendants may someday live on one of these planets. Atoms from Times Square, cycled through the heart of the sun, will form on new bodies. One day, either we will all be dead or we will all be New Yorkers. Tôi đã đọc xong phần đọc của tôi. Cảm ơn tất cả các bạn đã lắng nghe.